For the first full moon of the new year, happening in the fire sign of Leo, we're being presented with a very potent window of opportunity for leaning into any intentions that we've set for the year or in general, with a higher level of focus and an easier ability to sort of tap into our passion and drive. And with both Pluto and the Sun newly entering the sign of Aquarius leading up to this full moon, there's a progressive, innovative, and collective air to the next few days where coming together to give and receive support, exchange ideas, and tap into our collective genius is more supported now than ever. Hello friends, it's your girl Alina, and in this video we'll be diving into the 5 things you need to know all about this upcoming January 25th full moon happening at 5 degrees in Leo. Now the effects of this lunation can definitely be felt up to 5 days leading up to and following its peak. So in this video we'll be diving into the nature of this full moon in this sign, what it means for us, ways to align with this energy, and at the end, as always, I'll provide custom journal prompts so that we can reflect and align together. Also, if you'd like an outline of this video automatically emailed to your inbox, then be sure to sign up for my astrology newsletter in the description box below. Now, as always, each lunation and astrological event will impact us differently. So I always suggest for you to find out what house this full moon will fall in your unique charts so that you can more accurately predict what specific areas of your life will be most influenced at this time. So I will first start by showing you each sign and the house that this moon will land in for you. I always suggest checking your rising sign specifically, so you can pause to read. I am also super excited, cautiously excited to announce that your girl is planning a retreat. So yes, that means you, me, us, we will be traveling together in our little community to a beautiful destination, going on group excursions, learning, and I will be hosting some astrology workshops along the way and facilitating other workshops that you will get to choose. So if you're interested, then all you need to do is fill out a survey in the video description to vote on the things that you would prefer in terms of destinations, activities, and things like that. This is an idea that's been brewing for a while now, and if you've seen any of my community posts over the previous months, you've seen me asking questions like this. So I'm really excited to hear what your take is. Now, to set the stage with this full moon, we need to understand the nature of a full moon. So as many of you already know, full moons mark the midway point in the lunar cycle. As we see that the lunar cycle starts with a new moon, and we see the light steadily build to its peak at the full moon. Now, full moons astrologically are seen as a time for reflecting on how far we've come in life in different aspects of our lives. And we can get even more specific depending on what sign that this lunation will be in. And because following a full moon, we see that the light will be waning from the surface of the moon down to another new moon at the end of it, full moons are also seen as a beautiful time to reflect on anything that we'd like to let go of. Because through a full moon ritual, or even just reflecting around the time of a full moon, just as we see that the light wanes from the surface of the moon, so too can the energy around anything that we'd like to release also wane. Another aspect of all full moons is that just as we see that the moon can raise the tides, so too can it raise our emotions and intuitive abilities. I actually just recently was able to travel to Mexico and Honduras, where there are Mayan and Aztec temples and pyramids, and it was so interesting to learn about how they made pyramids and position them in alignment with the stars and for different planets, and how they actually looked to the movement of the stars in relation to tracking their farming. And it's also interesting to see how to this very day in the US, we have the Farmer's Almanac, which is also based off of traditional farming methods that were often based off of astronomy and astrology. So general cosmology. So I just find that to be really interesting. Now, when we specifically see a full moon in the sign of Leo, considering that Leo's ruling astral body is the sun, our central star, Leo full moons are very supportive times for all aspects of display. So now can be a very potent time for reflecting on and taking action within the Leo realms of leadership, romance, self-expression, that display aspect. Leo full moons are also a great time to reflect upon our balance between meeting the needs of the community and ourselves. Not necessarily putting ourselves first all the time in a selfish way, in an isolation type of way, but also considering how we can meet our needs while also meeting the needs of our family or our community or our company or where we are at. Now, this is partly because Leo is a fire sign, which is associated with passion, enthusiasm, and creativity. And like mentioned, it's ruled by the sun, which is the planet of self and vitality. We also see that, as with all full moons, this one is in an opposition aspect with the sun, which is currently in the sign of Aquarius. So as with all full moons, we are being asked to strike this balance between holding space for our personal needs, that being the Leo aspect, and considering the collective perspective of it all, that being the Aquarius aspect. And exploring this duality between the personal and the impersonal can be very insightful around this time. And we'll circle back to these themes as we dive deeper into the video and dive into journal prompts and intention setting for this lunation. Now, first up, in terms of transits happening at the time of this full moon, we first have to extend a very special happy birthday to all of our Aquarius friends, as we see that the sun will be entering the sign of Aquarius leading up to this full moon, marking Aquarius season on January 20th. Now, the sun being in Aquarius season specifically offers us energetic support within the realms of humanitarianism, detachment, reform, and rebellion. Now, Aquarius season, when we see that the sun is transiting the sign of Aquarius, offers us a lot of energetic support within the realms of things like humanitarianism, detachment, reform, and even rebellion. This season can also be a great time for things like finding new friends, cultivating our community and our chosen family. And it can also be a supportive time for leaning into our unique gifts. Also on January 20th, at the same time that the sun entered Aquarius, so did Pluto. Now, being named the Lord of the Underworld, Pluto is known within the astrology world to influence things like change, transformation, growth, and the necessary death that can sometimes come before a rebirth, breaking down outdated thinking and ushering in new perspectives. Now, while this can sound a bit ominous to some, I personally like to sort of liken this regeneration process to the winter before spring. We see the necessary death of parts of plants in the winter before it can then regenerate in the spring in bigger and better ways. Now, as many of you know, the reason why Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius right now is a bigger deal is because Pluto is a much slower moving planet, where we see that it changes signs every 240 something years. So this is a big deal. And despite being classified as a dwarf planet by NASA, Pluto's impact and power are undeniable and historically documented. So for example, reflecting on the last time that Pluto transited Aquarius from 1777 to 1778 shows the onset of the American Revolutionary War and the conclusion of Pluto's journey in Aquarius, that being in 1789, marked the beginning of the French and Haitian revolutions, which was a period of time where we saw people standing up against those in power and questioning those in power. Now, I actually made a video almost 2 years ago talking about the US's Pluto return, which is currently happening and involves this current Pluto entering the sign of Aquarius. So if you're interested in diving even deeper into the topic, specifically relative to the US, our financial system and structures, you can definitely check out that video by clicking the video link in the description box below. I think it just popped up here as well. Now, with all of that said, to better understand the nature of this transit, we also need to look into the sign of Aquarius. So as mentioned before, Aquarius is an air sign that's known to influence things like community collaboration, equitability, innovation, and progressive approaches to things, especially from a collective perspective. So when we see that Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, is entering this sign, it's a huge cosmic indicator that we're gearing up to see change, innovation, and regeneration within the realms of things like the internet, AI, the strength and power of our communities, and our relationships with hierarchies. Many of those things being based off of the fact that this is an air sign and Aquarius is all about that innovation and bringing unique things to the table. Now, on a more interpersonal level, this period definitely invites us to potentially redefine our friendships, aligning with like-minded individuals, and bringing dreams closer to reality through those connections. And it can be very helpful to think back to any themes in your life from now to 2008 when Pluto first entered the sign of Capricorn. Now, I dive into the themes of this period on the US Pluto return video a lot more. So if you'd like to dive deeper, again, check out the link in my video description. Now, next up at the time of this full moon, we'll be seeing that Jupiter will be sextiling Saturn. Now, this is the type of transit where we see a lot of luck and expansive Jupiter energy sort of manifesting wherever we've been showing up with integrity and persistence, that being the Saturn energy. Now, this is because we see that Jupiter, the planet of luck, expansion, and opportunities, is having a very complementary sextile aspect with Saturn, the planet of order, maturity, and restriction. And considering that Jupiter is currently in the sign of Taurus, this transit will also likely be presenting opportunities in areas of our career, offering the potential of things like stability within those spaces, depending on how this transit shows up in your personal charts. But overall, the key within this transit truly lies in realistic thinking and well-timed intentional decisions, that being a lot of that Saturn energy. Right now, at the time of this full moon, persistence will really be our ally on the path to achieving any sort of long-term objectives, especially if we're deciding to get clear on them at the time of this full moon. Next up, also at the time of this Leo full moon, we will have Mercury conjuncting Mars. Now, this transit definitely lends itself to the other one in that it's the kind that can bring a lot more mental vigor and energy to us. And we can notice this sort of collective heightened sense of enthusiasm and focus in our thinking around this time, which can really lend itself to the discipline-driven Jupiter-Saturn transit happening at this time. But on the flip side, in alignment with this spike in mental energy, we might also see a higher potential for things like defensiveness or reactionary responses to things before the more slower and deeper thought out responses come to our minds. And from a constructive perspective of that reality of Mars bringing in that potential aggression to our thinking or that heightened energy on one side, but potential anger or a need for force on the flip side, is by us considering channeling any energy that we have in focusing on fighting or working towards worthy causes or issues within our life or community. Now, this is also a great time for advocating for ourselves and others if we've been wanting to work up the courage to do something like that. And it actually makes a lot of sense. It's very aligned for us to do that as well from the perspective of the moon transiting Leo at this time. Leo is very well known for being the sign of advocating for those that we love. It'll only be if we're not focusing our energy within something constructive like that we might see some mishaps. So it will be very helpful around this time to maintain our self-awareness to prevent any sort of mistargeted aggression or projections. And finally, one of the most influential transits at the time of this full moon will be when both the sun and moon will be squaring Jupiter. Now, these transits can tend to bring sort of tests or challenges when it comes to us pushing for growth, while also avoiding things like burning out or feeling overwhelmed. And the urge to expand and achieve more can feel a bit stronger within us at this time, but remaining cautious and intentional with our actions will be very helpful to avoid any sort of situation where we feel like we're spreading ourselves too thin. Now, some ways to navigate any heavier work at this time can be to focus on fewer projects for more effective success. And this can look like breaking things down into smaller tasks, spreading it out over a wider span of time, or even looking into how you might be able to delegate some of the work. Now, Jupiter's influence also has the potential to exaggerate confidence and ego, which can then potentially lead to straining our relationships and ourselves. And by the way, if this video has been resonating with you and you've been enjoying it and you aren't already subscribed, what are you doing? Be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on because I make videos like these for every single full and new moon of the year. Next up, in terms of ways to align with this Leo full moon energy, one of them can be to reflect on how far you've come in terms of speaking up for yourself, in terms of self-advocacy or advocating for others, whether that looks like setting boundaries in your life, or that might look like how involved you might have gotten in humanitarian efforts or advocating for people in need in some way. This is a beautiful time to celebrate how far you've come, while also looking at anything that might be hindering your ability to do those things, if those are things that you want to do right now. Another aspect of Leo full moon can be looking at any sort of ways, if at all, that you might have wanted to do things where you are being seen. Leo energy is all about displaying ourselves, shining bright like the sun. So that can look like maybe advocating for yourself at work, giving a speech, a talk, making a video. Maybe you've wanted to do more creative efforts or anything that has to do with you being perceived. And maybe you have the creativity aspect of it down, but not the comfortability of being seen in some way. So reflecting on those themes at this time can be very powerful. And if you notice while you're reflecting on it, even as I'm describing it, what's hindering you? What's holding you back? Is it a fear of being seen? Is it a fear of being judged? Is that coming from a memory of a bad experience that you're letting project onto the future, assuming that that'll play out that way? Diving deeper into that, having these self-inquiries can be very potent around this time because it can really help set the stage for the rest of this lunar cycle and the year. And next up, let's talk collective perspective. So this is a segment where I offer a few ideas for ways to engage in your community from a humanitarian or volunteer perspective to connect with one another, but also to support people who might need it. And these are ideas that are in alignment with the themes of this current lunation and astrological events happening. So with this Leo energy being heightened during the full moon, activities that promote things like individuality and self-expression can particularly resonate at this time. So this can include creating a space for marginalized voices or promoting self-expression for children. So two specific examples include things like women's resource centers. Women's resource centers are often focused on promoting self-expression and individuality for women. Some of these centers can tend to offer programs and services such as art therapy, writing workshops, and self-care classes. So you can find centers like these in your community by checking out sites like volunteermatch.com or through the YMCA, which all offer programs and services for women, including things like housing, counseling, and job training. And next, let's dive into these Leo full moon journal prompts. So if you have your Orline astrology planner, you can go ahead and flip over to the dedicated full moon journaling area so you can write all of this out along with some extra prompts that are in there. What we'll do is you will see the writing prompts displayed on the screen, and they will also be in the video description. So once you see them on the screen, I invite you to pause the video, write them out, and then we'll come back. If you have ever experienced burnout, what were the signs leading up to it for you? And how can you prevent it moving forward? When was the last time, if any, that you shrunk or minimized yourself? What would showing up as your fullest self look like if you could redo that situation? When was the last time that you caught yourself being reactionary? And how has self-awareness helped you in disagreements? And finally, is there anything that you're ready to release during this full moon? This can look like limiting beliefs, habits, patterns, people, or environments that might no longer be serving you. All right, y'all. I hope that you enjoyed those writing prompts. And if there's anything that came up for you that you would be interested in sharing, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section. I'd also like to hear if you've already been noticing any of the themes of Pluto entering Aquarius or the sun entering Aquarius or any of the astrological events that I talked about. Again, fill out the survey for this retreat idea. Like I said, it's just an idea, but I'm so excited to potentially actualize it this year and go on a trip with you guys. So definitely check that out. And like I mentioned before, if you like these videos and you like the outline of it directly emailed to you, you can also sign up for that in the video description for that newsletter. But with all of that said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. I also wanna say thank you to y'all for your patience with me uploading this a little later. Leading up to this full moon, but life is lifing right now. But with all of that said, I will leave you with my favorite quote, and that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination.